Welcome back to the second part of the video. The first part was defining the difference between a spouse and a de facto partner. So if you haven't watched that and you'd be interested to know the difference, just go and watch that video. Now this is the second part, which is basically a step-by-step process of applying for the Australia Spousal visa. And you start with subclass 309 and then you move on to subclass 100. And this is a case study of Kenya. Well, one of the spouses is Australian and the other spouse is Kenyan. So this is a real case study of an application we have done. And I hope that this video can help someone who is trying to get into this kind of application process and might not know where to start or might have some questions. I hope by watching this video, some of your questions will be answered. And if not all questions are answered, please don't hesitate to call or send a message on WhatsApp, and then I can always respond to that to the best of my ability. Now, this spousal visa that we're going to talk about today is an offshore. And what I mean by offshore is that the applicants who are applying for this visa are not in Australia. They are outside Australia. They are actually in Kenya. I'll make another video if it's onshore, but for today let's start with offshore, which is what applies to the majority of our clientele. Now, the first thing I'd like you guys to know is that this visa process for a partner visa or a spousal visa or a marriage visa, whatever you want to call it, it's usually a two-in-one kind of visa application. So you pay once for the price of two. You start with the temporary visa, and then once that is issued, you travel to Australia, and then while you're there for 2 or 3 years, they now give you the permanent visa, which is a pathway to permanent residency. So it's a two-in-one because you start with subclass 309 and then you proceed to subclass 100. So only until the subclass 309 has been approved that you now proceed to subclass 100. And this happens automatically. So the first thing you need to know is that the one you will start with will be a temporary visa, but it leads directly to the permanent residency visa. The other condition for this visa is that you have to be outside Australia. I think we've already covered that. But with this visa, you stay in Australia until your permanent partner visa is issued. Okay. What can you do with this visa and what can't you do with this visa? Because we know that the moment a country gives you a visa, there's what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do. So if your visa is approved, the temporary subclass 309, you can live in Australia, you can work in Australia, you can also study in Australia. So you can go to school as a student, you can work there, and you can live there freely. Secondly, you can travel to and from Australia as many times as possible. So it doesn't have to mean that once you go there, you're not allowed to leave. You can go to Australia, come back, go, as many times as you want. You have that freedom. Thirdly, you have access to Australian public health scheme, which is called Medicare, because this is a partner visa, it's a spousal visa. So because of your spouse, who is either an Australian citizen or a permanent resident of Australia or New Zealand, then you also benefit from that free Australian public health scheme. Okay. However, there are things that you need to prove for the embassy to issue this kind of a visa. And the first one is that you have to prove that you're in a genuine relationship with your spouse or de facto partner. I'm happy I can now use both terms because we've already given the differences. So that relationship has to be genuine. When I mean genuine, I mean it has to be real, and there has to be evidence showing that it's a real, genuine relationship. So sometimes if you meet someone online and you haven't known them for a very long time and you don't have a lot of proof to show that you're in a genuine relationship with this person, that might raise some red flags. So make sure you have all the evidence to show that that relationship is genuine. Secondly, your spouse must sponsor you. So the spouse who is the Australian, he or she has to sponsor you, meaning they have to write the sponsorship letter, they have to cover all the costs for that visa, and they have to show that they're able to provide and take care of you while you're in Australia without depending on the government for financial assistance. So they can show this by proving that they have stable income or stable employment, that they don't usually benefit from the benefits that the government grants to its citizens. They have to prove that they can actually afford to sponsor you, and we will get to the price of that spousal visa. You must be outside Australia, but you could either be in Australia or outside Australia when they decide. Meaning, when you're applying, you have to be outside. But because this kind of visas take a very long time to get the decision done, if you have a visit visa to Australia, you can be inside Australia while they decide. But while you are launching the application, you are outside. I hope that is clear. When I said your sponsor must prove that they can afford to take care of you, there is not a minimum bank balance that is needed to be shown, but they just have to show the ability to support you without relying on government assistance. So it's not about how much money is in my sponsor's bank account. It boils down to things like, if we look at your sponsor's financial circumstances, are they able to support you? So things like their income, which they look at things like payslips, employment letters, contracts, and any other kind of resources that they may have. Their employment status, are they employed? Are they self-employed? Do they have the licenses and the permits to show that? They also look at their bank statements and the other circumstances that determine one's financial situation is things like their location, where do they live, what kind of a house do they live in, and their partner's needs, because you could have a partner who might have some specific needs, maybe some specific medical needs, maybe a person living with disability. So all these factors are looked at, and they look whether you are able to actually support your partner and yourself. Okay, so that was just looking at the conditions and what you can and cannot do with that kind of a visa. The next step is to look at now the step-by-step process. If you've ever applied for a visa to Australia, study, visit, work, you know that the first thing you need to do is to create an IMI account. IMI, I-M-M-I, IMI account. So you can go Google, see what that looks like. But it's basically an account that opens a portal for you to submit all your Australian visa applications, regardless of the category of visa. So once you've determined your eligibility, you now proceed to opening the IMI account. And even before you open the IMI account, I always advise my clients to gather all the documents, because the moment you start filling in the application, you need to have all the information at hand. Especially this spousal visa, it's a very, very long visa. It has so many pages, so much documentation is requested. So first gather all the documents, gather the passports, gather the IDs, gather the marriage certificate, gather the birth certificates, gather the sponsor's letter, gather the pay slips, gather the bank statements, gather everything so that it makes the visa application easier, whether it's for yourself or you've appointed a person to do this visa application on your behalf. It's always good to have all the documentation in place before you start filling in, just to make things easier and smoother, and so that things can also flow and you don't forget something important, like an important document that you might overlook. There's a lot of documents, a lot. I may not be able to list all of them, but generally you need things like passports for both sides, the sponsor and the other partner, their family members also, their parents, their siblings, children they may have. Things like evidence of genuine relationships, so photos together, wedding photos, vacation photos, photos with friends, not just selfies, photos with other people also, your friends, your relatives, photos with people, and not in just one day, but photos from this time to another time to another time, something that shows that this is an airtight case. Joint bills, you may be paying water bills together, electricity bills together, rent together, investments together, lease agreements, messages, so all this kind of evidence. Of course, a marriage certificate or an affidavit of marriage, police clearance certificate, especially for the partner, the spouse who's not an Australian. And then of course you're going to need to do a medical examination at some point during the application process. And the reason why you're doing this medical exam is because this is a visa that gives you, it opens up doors for permanent residency. So a medical exam, it has to be done. And in Kenya there is only I think quite a number of places that are approved to do this kind of medical exams. And some of the things they look at is, someone has asked me what kind of diseases do they look at. Well, when you go for the medical exam, especially the one at IOM, they look at things like tuberculosis, HIV, hepatitis, pregnancies, STDs. It's just a general medical examination, which is part of the process. So anyway, let's go back to how to do it. So once you create the IMI account, you now go to the IMI portal, and then you choose the category of the visa, which is now the partner visa. You will see it's been written. It's a provisional partner visa 309/100, and you will be applying for both at the same time. But you'll only submit one application, but it will represent both. You submit all the paperwork, and then there's another form that you download. It's called Form 47SP that the sponsor actually fills in. All these forms are inside the portal, so don't worry, you don't need to go find them anywhere else. All of this information is inside the IMI account. As you're making your application, it redirects you in each and every step, so don't worry. So you download that form, the sponsor fills it, and then you upload it when it's already filled. And of course you attach all the documents in PDF format, and then you pay for the application fee. Now remember, I told you guys, this visa, it's a 2-in-1. So the visa fee is it's quite expensive because you're actually paying for 2 visas at the same time. And the visa as of right now, it's 9,095 Australian dollars. So you will pay that 9,095 Australian dollars while you're submitting this application, that once. So even when you and your spouse travel back to Australia together, or when the spouse travels to Australia, once the visa is approved and then they graduate to the next permanent visa, you will not pay any other fees. So once you pay the 1995, that's it. So the payment can be done online. It's usually done online via BPay, which is what the Australians prefer, or using your credit card or your debit card. So it doesn't matter what method you use, but I would prefer using BPay because it's just faster. Because for debit and credit card, they might take some time for the payment to reflect. And you see, once you pay and you submit, now you have to wait for them to acknowledge that they have received the payment so that you can move on to the next step, which is usually completing the health examination. And then after the health examination, now you apply to go do your biometrics. Biometrics is where they take your photo, passport photo, and they take your fingerprints. So when you're arranging for biometrics, which is also something you do inside the IMI account, you usually get something called an HAP ID. You get it from the IMI account, and you keep it safe because that is what you're going to show at the gate when you're going to do your medical exam. Then from there you attend the interview / biometrics. Sometimes some clients might be called, some applicants might be called in for an interview, sometimes not so much, they just need to take their biometrics, but either way you will be submitting your biometrics at some point, and then from there you wait for processing. Now as I said, these visas take some time, so you have to exercise patience. It can take anywhere between 12 months to 24 months, which is between 1 year, some people 1.5 years, some people 2 years. But eventually, you should be able to get the visa. And once your visa has been granted, which is now they will grant you the temporary subclass 309, you can fly to Australia and start life with your partner. And then while you're there, it automatically starts now processing the subclass 100. Now remember, guys, I told you, in case the relationship breaks down somewhere in between the processing, it's good to notify the authorities, because while you're in Australia, for them to issue you the permanent residency one, they're also going to come back and check that you traveled to Australia. Are you living with this Australian citizen? What have you been up to? Do you have children? Are you expecting children? Have you started working? You know, so they will also still do their background check. So in case the relation, and there's no need to risk losing it all, especially after spending so much money. So in case the relationship breaks down, but you're already in Australia, if you're already working or studying or doing something in Australia, you can always notify them, and you can always now ask for another visa category, instead of you going there and then you separate with your partner, God forbid, but in case it happens, and then when they come and check and realize that this relationship ended or it was a sham, then you get banned, you could even get deported. So it's always good to be honest about the situation. And it's also nice to protect yourself, because if the relationship breaks down, you see, the government is assuming that you two are together, but if you're not together, yet the government thinks you're together, and then something happens to you, you know. So it's always good to update them in case something happens, in case things change, notify them. I'm very sure the immigration department, the home affairs department in Australia can be compassionate and grant you something. If you're already enrolled into a school in Australia, something can be arranged. So once you have applied, now what you need to do is you just keep monitoring your email account. Although once the visa is issued, you'll get an email, but don't just apply and then forget about it. Every once in a while, maybe every 3 weeks or 2 weeks, log into the email account, look at the updates, because in case the department needs more information from you, you will get a message in your portal showing, maybe they're telling you to submit more documentation, or do this or do that, you know. So just keep checking your email account for any updates, for any messages. You will see that when you first submit that application, it starts with initial assessment, and then it moves on to the next stage, and then it goes to further processing, and then eventually the visa is issued. So once you submit your application, just keep checking your account here and there. Is there any updates? Do they need more information from me? And then if you have any questions, you can always ask, or you can even just contact them directly, and they will be willing to answer you. So that's it. Keep your email account username and password safely, because if this visa is gonna take 2 years, then you need to be able to log in every now and then. So that's it for today's video. I hope I answered majority, if not all, the questions, and I wish you good luck in your visa applications. Bye.